Queen Victoria's love for her husband Prince Consort Albert is well documented, with the 19th-century monarch dedicating the better part of her life to mourning his death. Having met in 1936, the pair quickly developed an affection for each other, with both Victoria and Albert recording that they almost instantly fell in love in their memoirs. Following her accession to the throne, Victoria proposed to her future husband, in keeping with a custom that dictated no one could propose to a reigning monarch, and they were married 4 months later on February 10, 1840. Writing in her diary, the Queen described it as the happiest day of her life, but the weeks before the nuptials had not been so pleasant, with Victoria becoming frustrated with the protocols that went along with the wedding of a sovereign. Julia Baird, historian and author of Victoria, the Queen, claimed Victoria wanted a simple wedding, a difficult desire given her role. Writing for the Sydney Morning Herald in 2016, Ms. Baird explained the Queen was persuaded to have a more elaborate celebration, suitable for a monarch. Lord Melbourne, William Lamb, the second Viscount Melbourne, who was the Prime Minister and the young Queen's mentor, had been tasked with boosting Victoria's spirits in the lead-up to the big day. Ms. Baird wrote, "He counselled her to try to overcome her public shyness and discomfort with being looked at. He had convinced her to invite not only the Duke of Wellington, but also Lord Liverpool, despite her determination to have a wedding entirely devoid of Tories." Melbourne also persuaded her that the ceremony should take place in the Chapel Royal of St James's Palace, even though she thought it was hideous. Victoria sighed, "Everything is always made so uncomfortable for kings and queens." Queen Cancer revelation approved by royals to avoid Harry book bombshell. Giles Brandreth, a royal author and friend of Prince Philip, has claimed the late Queen Elizabeth II had a form of bone marrow cancer. The biographer made the statement about Her Majesty's health struggle in his upcoming book, Elizabeth, An Intimate Portrait. Find out more about the claim here. However, there were some aspects of her big day Victoria insisted on. When the Queen was asked whether she would like to remove Obey from the marriage service, she insisted it remained. And, according to Ms. Baird, while Albert wanted her to have only daughters of mothers he considered virtuous in her bridal party, Melbourne advised her, with the glorious hypocrisy of the privileged, that this kind of morality was a problem only for the lower classes. The historian continued, "She decided to ignore Albert's wishes and chose her 12 bridesmaids according to rank. She even, daringly, included the daughter of the notorious Lady Jersey, who had been the mistress of George IV. The Queen shrugged off the objections of her mother and the Prime Minister to allow Albert to sleep under her roof on the night before their wedding. She deemed their protests as foolish nonsense, arguing she would sleep better if he were nearby. Speaking to Lord Melbourne, she quipped, "I declared laughing I would show that I could sometimes have my own will, though I was so seldom allowed to have it," which made Lord M. laugh. However, the stresses of planning a wedding were getting to the Queen. Ms. Baird explained, as her wedding loomed, Victoria became increasingly agitated. She grew pale and thin, she could not eat or sleep, she was feverish, her entire body ached and she had a terrible cold. Even writing letters exhausted her. Her personal physician examined her and told her she had the measles. As Victoria lay in her bed watching rain streak the dirt on her windows at Kensington Palace, trying not to panic, doubt crawled through her mind. Hadn't she enjoyed the last 2 years of her life as an independent woman more than any others? That pure freedom was about to slip from her grasp. Victoria was just 20 years old and began questioning what life would be like after tying the knot. The young queen dreaded the thought of having children, and questioned whether she was good enough for Albert. Nonetheless, Victoria's love for her groom was deep, and her measles, which turned out to be a case of nerves, calmed the moment she saw Albert. "Seeing his dear face again put me at rest about everything," she wrote at the time. They were married at the Chapel Royal of St. James Palace, London, and later retired to Windsor Castle, with Victoria utterly besotted and delighted to finally be alone with her husband. The Queen's wedding night was the closest thing she had known to bliss, according to her journal entry, which read, "I never spent such an evening. My dearest dear Albert. His excessive love and affection gave me feelings of heavenly love and happiness I never could have hoped to have felt before. He clasped me in his arms, and we kissed each other again and again. His beauty, his sweetness and gentleness, really how can I ever be thankful enough to have such a husband? To be called by names of tenderness, I have never yet heard used to me before, was bliss beyond belief. Oh! This was the happiest day of my life."